So Transformers has done well for itself. Because it all started back in 1984, where Hasbro got toy molds from the Japanese toy company Takara, as well as creating a cartoon series to get the kiddies hyped, and sure enough, it proved a popular hit. After all, Transformers is a 3-in-1 toy. You have a vehicle mode, most of the time, a transforming puzzle, and a posable action figure, ready to take on the bad guys. The toy line has proven popular that it is still around to this day, even giving the old toys a much needed update, which is what was long overdue for these guys. These 6 bots are the Constructicons, evil construction robots assigned by Megatron to not only build stuff, but also destroying it. With 6 robots to go through, we better get started. First up is Scrapper, who is the leader of the bunch. He's a front end loader who rolls pretty well, and his scoop arm has some posable joints, but lacks one for the scoop bucket. The transformation is pretty simple, almost echoing the original G1 toy. And here is Scrapper in his robot mode, a pretty accurate representation of the character with the style and paint apps, with perhaps the exception of his face, which uses a gunmetal colour than silver, but I kinda like it as it shows he is the leader of the group. He overall has a good amount of joints that makes him posable, including a retool done to his arm. While the Hasbro version doesn't have any elbows, the Takara version does, so now you no longer have to pose him with awkwardly straight arms. So overall Scrapper is a pretty decent figure, with good posability as well as resembling the G1 character very well. While he may have some backpack kibble, it's not enough to ruin the figure. Next up is Mixmaster, who is probably the most altered of the 6 as he has become a front discharge cement mixer as opposed to his iconic G1 flat nose cement truck. His new look did bother me at first, but I've since warmed up to it. Though Takara's paint apps are done to make the rear end resemble the front, which continues to add to the confusion of this mode for the odd few. The mixer itself doesn't rotate, which is a shame, but would have been a pain to have engineered. Transformation is a little fiddly, but does give us an interesting head reveal. In robot mode, Mixmaster does resemble his G1 appearance despite his altered vehicle mode. His cement mixer noticeably sticks out with no place to go, but at least it can be used as a stand for complex posing, though his bulky lower legs may prevent some kick poses due to the weight of them. He also has oddball elbow joints, which Takara fits with a secondary joint to improve the overall look. In the end he is decent enough, but would have been nice if his cement mixer had a better place to go whilst in robot mode. Here we now have his Scavenger, who is an excavator. While he has solid treads, the small wheels on his underside actually roll pretty well. His excavator arm is posable, though lacks a joint for the bucket, as well as lacking a swivel joint between the treads and body. Despite these drawbacks, he is still pretty much the most play value of the 6 in vehicle mode. His transformation is slightly difficult, where if you're not careful, his ball joints may pop off during transformation. Now in robot mode, Scavenger has a good look to him, with plenty of ball joints to give him a lot of posability. The retool is received but often overlooked are his knee joints, being mushroom pegged and a pin joint which allows better knee articulation and less likely to pop off when extending the legs compared to the original ball joints from the Hasbro version. His excavator arm in robot mode can clip out of the way and remain stored, but you can leave it out for cartoon accuracy. He is overall a decent figure with not as many notable changes compared to the Hasbro version. Here we have now his Bone Crusher, the bulldozer. Much like Scavenger, he has solid treads with rolling wheels on the underside, though he has inaccurate colours on the sides of his treads. His front bucket does move up and down, though not as accurate to a real-world bulldozer due to it being part of the transformation. Speaking of which, the transformation is enjoyable, if not a little fiddly, but does have an interesting feature where the head in the cab area moves all the way to the front of the vehicle. In robot mode, it's noticeable he is lacking much in paint apps due to keeping to G1 cartoon accuracy, despite the inaccurate colours on the sides of his treads. Speaking of which, his legs are the same as the retooled versions of Scavenger, though he also has a retooled hip joint which now better clips in, preventing him from doing the splits from a bonk to the head. He is overall an improvement over the Hasbro version, being able to stand and pose proudly with the other bots. Up next is Hook, who is a construction crane truck. He does roll very well, though his main feature, the crane, is a disappointment, as it can only go up and down. It cannot extend like the G1 toy could, and the rear cab can't rotate due to the engineering of the figure. His transformation is rather fiddly, such as the back panel and more importantly the knee joints. In robot mode, he has some minor issues such as his backpack. While it will stay put, it doesn't feel as secure. Much like Mixmaster, his crane has no place to go, but can be used as a stand for posing. Once again, like Mixmaster, he has similar arms including the retooled secondary elbow joint to improve the overall look of the arms. In the end he's not too bad, but to me he feels the weaker of the 6 bots. But he does have a undocumented mode, being nicknamed Minecraft mode. And finally here we have his Longhaul, who is clearly the biggest of the 6 bots. While he is a dump truck, he can't dump anything due to his design, but he can at least carry most of the bot's accessories. Despite its large underside, he still has enough clearance to roll very well. His transformation is the right mix of simple and challenging, though his heavy ratchet joints might make things a little tricky. Now in robot mode, it shows how ill-proportioned he looks. Having a small head, massive body, piddly little arms, bulbous legs, and tiny feet. While his proportions are whacked, it still shows him to be a powerhouse of brute strength, despite the arm sizes. His leg joints have heavy ratcheting which makes it tricky to move without enough force. He also is the only bot with a waist swivel, though to fully use it you must unclip the truck bed. His arms have been retooled to feature a front elbow swivel joint, but still maintains his sideways elbow action. While he has some faults such as the odd shape and size, he is pretty much my favourite of the 6 bots. So overall these bots together are a pretty awesome team, ready for construction work, building, destroying and even hunting. They all come with weapon accessories. 2 big blasters, 2 big rocket pods, 2 swords that can double as an energon bow, and a thing. They are passable enough weapons, though Takara once again saves the day with giving the bots their G1 guns as a reasonable substitute and to be taken more seriously. So yeah, the Constructicons are pretty decent, though there's one thing that's worth mentioning about them. The toy line that these came from is Unite Warriors, which is the Takara name for Hasbro's Combiner Wars line, which means that these guys can combine!
Constructicons! Transform and combine into Devastator!
When combining these guys, it's best to start from the bottom and work your way upwards. It can get a little fiddly, but in the end it is still enjoyable enough transformation, and here we have is the biggest Transformer combiner, Devastator! His large weapon accessories all form to build Devastator's chest plate, his lower arms, and his massive cannon blaster. It has been long overdue for a Devastator that is big, doesn't require building, not imposters, as well as not a repaint of another combiner. Classics Devastator, you're officially retired. So naturally being made up of 6 Voyager figures, he stands very tall and dwarfs all the robos I've got. Not to mention he is pretty heavy and leaves me impressed with how well Scrapper's leg mode is managing to cope with the weight. But if you're unfortunate enough to have this tab on his scoop arm break, then wave bye bye to balancing. It is possible to get a replacement Scrapper from Hasbro, provided that it's the Combiner Wars version and you live in America. As for Europe, no such luck as usual. Definitely feel sorry for the poor saps who work at customer service having to listen to all these irate customers.
Onder jullie stomme scrapper, ik word er helemaal gek van. Zo'n stomme scheparm werkt voor een meter. Welke kant-en-klare flapkanaal heeft dit ding ontworpen, zeg je me?
Also, rather surprisingly, he is very posable for a combiner of that size, being able to pull off a lot of moves than his G1 brick. But he is definitely not stop motion friendly. He has an impressive look to him and shows why Bone Crusher has purple side treads to keep him more asymmetrical, though his upper arms are indeed questionable. The Scavenger arm has the width, but none of the bulk, while Bone Crusher has the bulk, but none of the width, which often results in third-party upgrade kits to use the entire bot as arms rather than only parts of them. One thing worth mentioning is Devastator's head. He has a pretty cool feature whereby flipping up his forehead, you can flip his visor up and down, for all the G1 continuity errors you can muster. Overall, this Devastator set is very good. He is a big posable bot that for the most part holds up very well, while the 6 Constructicons are a great update, especially with the retooling by Takara. For the most part, if you're interested in Devastator, I think he's worth picking up. But it will depend on budget and what you favour, though if Devastator is a little too big and expensive for your liking, then perhaps consider the smaller guys, as you'll most likely find them going cheap at many stores. But hey, at least you don't have to spend double or even triple on a third party Devastator. Even though I do like the look of Green Giant. What? Wait, no, wait.
sideways elbow action.